as you seek to strengthen and to solidify your achievements, as you confront the challenges still to be addressed, and as, my friends, you move towards a brighter future of peace, democracy, the protection of human rights, the attainment of good governance, the rule of law and prosperity that you so much deserve and have, frankly, for far too long been denied. That future which you embody will unleash the great potential of this beautiful country with its natural resources and the talent and spirit of its courageous and resourceful people, and enable you to become the great nation in the region and the world that you have it in your power to be. Thank you very much indeed.
We learned so much from you today. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite British Ambassador Andrew Patrick and Unyatu to take a seat on the stage. Thank you. The floor is now open for a question and answer session. If you have questions, please raise your hands so that our embassy colleagues can pass you the microphone. Please state your name, the name of your organization or university. Microphones will be brought to you, so please wait. အခမ်းအနားစီစဉ်ရမိန့်ခွန်းများကိုစတင်မြင်နိုင်ပြီဖြစ်ပါတယ်။မိန့်ခွန်းများမမြင်နိုင်ခင်မှာမိမိရဲ့နာမည်နဲ့အဖွဲ့အစည်းကိုဥစ္စာပထမမိတ်ဆက်ပေးစီလို့ရှင်လိုပါရှင်။
Thank you so much. Mr. Speaker, thanks very much for being here. Thanks very much for your visit to Burma. May I ask you some questions, please? But before I ask my question, let me tell you a bit about some true situations happening in this country, Burma or Myanmar. Obviously, current Burma is not as developed as Britain, and the current Burmese societal norms are very far from those of Britain today. In today's Britain and British society, multiculturalism is very vital, and it has a big role in all walks of life in modern Britain. In Britain, as you mentioned, a Muslim of Pakistani descent.
Excuse me, would you mind? This is an occasion for people to ask questions, right? Not to give a speech. So, yeah, would you mind asking your question?
Yes, sir. So, may I ask you the question directly? The question here is, I'm wondering what era of British history would modern-day Burma be equivalent to? Is contemporary Myanmar similar to the 15th or 16th or 17th or 19th century Britain in terms of development and how the country treats its own people? If so, how many years will Burma need to catch up to modern present-day Britain? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much indeed, sir, for your question. I appreciate your kind remarks, and I absolutely understand your desire for a categorization, but I really don't seek to provide a categorization. I'm sorry if that disappoints you, but I'll explain why. I think that it's far too simplistic, and it may be very convenient to have things in boxes saying this belongs to this era, that belongs to that era. But the truth is, you know, the position is very much more complicated. There is a whole mosaic in the society, and indeed in many societies, but certainly in this society, and I don't think it's right or proper for me to seek to pass judgment and to say you are behaving reminiscent of this era or that era, and that we are somehow eras beyond that. It is obviously a fact of life, ladies and gentlemen, that if you have been working pretty well uninterruptedly at the development of your democracy for hundreds of years, you will be likely, if you've got some good leaders and determined citizens, to make progress. And I like to think that we have made progress in Britain. But I was very careful to say, not just out of politeness or a desire not to be arrogant, but because it's true that we're still working at it. There are many features of our system that need to be improved. And that's obviously true here in your country. The disadvantage you have is nothing to do with your people and everything to do with, in particular, the often savage history and the heartbreaking history of 60 years of dictatorship and denial of citizens' rights. I think you've achieved a remarkable amount over the last 5 years. And I think it's a combination of great leadership and a terrific strength, to some degree in organizational terms, but above all in terms of mindset and spirit of your civil society, a goodly proportion of which, and possibly a fair reflection of which, is represented in this room tonight. So I'm not going to say one century or another, or one era or another. What I want to say is I think you've made really worthwhile progress. I think that there is a long way to go. But could I have imagined putting up with and being able eventually to overcome the brutal tyranny which you had to put up with and then overcame? I wouldn't say so for one moment. So I think you've achieved a lot. There is a long way to go to achieve a full democracy, to achieve great economic advance, to secure a peace settlement, and to ensure racial and religious justice. But what I would like to do is to look at the glass as half full rather than as half empty, and not to rank or stigmatize or think it's proper for me as an outsider to mark your homework. I'm not going to do that because I think that would be disrespectful. We've made progress, there's more to achieve, and let's try to do it together.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
It's great to hear the length of the time that you spent in Burma and the love that you have for the country from what you have said. I would like to ask, in the UK, who lobbies for Burma? What organisations are there in the UK who are keeping the spirit alive of what is happening in Burma and what might happen in the future? Are we dealing with organisations that are linked to religion? Are we dealing with organisations which are linked to previous setups in the country? Or have we got a range of different organisations from civil society and from other organisations who are actively lobbying you in Parliament in order to keep the spirit of Burma fresh in the minds of the British people?
Thank you, Ms. Holloway, for your question and again for your generous remarks. First of all, I will say that in Parliament there is a significant number of people. Of course, it's a very small minority, but there's a significant number of colleagues in the different political parties in the House of Commons who take an interest, who attend all-party group meetings, who put down written questions of ministers, who ask oral questions, who are ready to be involved in public events and interaction with members, for example, of the exiled Burmese community in the UK, people who've either chosen or felt obliged to leave Burma at one point or another. So there's a considerable body of parliamentarians with an interest. I used to chair the all-party parliamentary group for democracy in Burma, but there are other people who've taken up the mantle. And secondly, I would say to you, I couldn't offer you an exhaustive list, but I think that there are a number of organisations active in the field. Two in particular spring to mind. There is the Burma Campaign, UK, which I think does quite outstanding work. It tells it as it sees it. Mark Farmer, Zoya Fan, now Mark's wife, Anna Roberts and others at that campaign do brilliant work in highlighting the issues, paying tribute to Aung San Suu Kyi and the NLD for the great achievement and paying tribute to civil society groups and so on, but also pointing out the continuing challenges and speaking up on the causes that continue very much to matter. That's one group, and I salute their work, and I've often taken briefings from them myself. Another is Christian Solidarity Worldwide. Ladies and gentlemen, Christian Solidarity Worldwide is a humanitarian aid provider and also a human rights advocacy organization. But it doesn't just concern itself with Christians. It concerns itself with people of all faiths and of no faith, and it sees it as its mission to give, as Caroline Cox, Baroness Cox once said, a voice to the voiceless. Now, the particular person I know at CSW, better than anyone else, is my old and good friend, Ben Rogers, the Asia Advocacy Officer for CSW. He's one of the most remarkable people I've met in my time in politics. I mean, an absolutely outstanding person, and there's enormous ability, but also complete integrity. You know, I mentioned the person who'd been tortured, water tortured, by a member of the Tatman Law, who showed the most extraordinary determination, but also fortitude and dignity. Well, Ben hasn't suffered torture. He's a relatively fortunate person, but he is characterized by huge determination and something of which I wish we could have more in our public life, which I very much admire. I don't claim to exhibit it myself. And that is a willingness, an instinctive readiness to play the ball, not the man or the woman. So Ben rarely, if ever, accuses anyone of anything other than error. He doesn't traduce people, he doesn't insult people, he's not vicious about people, but he's a tremendously steely soldier, a kind of intellectual and political soldier for liberty. And then, of course, there's Lucinda Phillips, who's Aung San Suu Kyi's sister, who lives in the UK, and I'm sure there are others as Prospect and various others who campaign. But those are some of the examples, and I don't think that they're tied to any one group, and they're seeking progress, rule of law, liberty, justice, and a good future for everyone in the country.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last question, please. We can have two more.
Yeah, we must.
More, please, yeah.
I don't mind. But I'm not
And we can start with the lady. Thank you.
It's a privilege to ask you the questions.
You're very kind.
Yes. I'm Hillary, not Clinton, but Hillary Hunt inside. Yes. And
But I must tell you, I am supporting Hillary Clinton. The ambassador says I'm politically neutral. Yeah, but I'm not neutral between the fireman and the firefighter and the fire.
actually, I'm from the I'm a student from Yangon School of Political Science, and I am also a student from Yangon University. And for 1 year, I learned about politics. Actually, yes. One of my mother's uncles is like the first transition minister. So I learned about to be involved in the government or politically. But here's I see a big problem for me. Is how we could do inclusive walkouts for historically exclusive place here in Myanmar. And could I know some successful country which succeed from exclusive state like this? Because Myanmar is in conflict for 1,000 years.
Forgive me, I didn't hear the question. Can you just say the question? Sorry.
Okay. Question
Thank you.
is how we could do inclusive walkout for historically exclusive place. I mean, Myanmar has been exclusive for thousands of years. How we could make inclusive walkout? because we are rich in natural resources, the tail the
Well, it's a great challenge of leadership to ensure that A, there is a balance between the effective use of natural resources on the one hand and the protection of the environment on the other. I'm not sure that I can think of one country that does it better than any other, but I think that we should learn from each other. And although my country has voted to leave the European Union, and that's a fact, I'm not disputing that, I would want you to know that my country certainly doesn't intend to look away from Europe. We must still cooperate. And I think that you can look to and seek to cooperate with your neighbours and take examples from the international community about the best use of natural resources. And I suppose the only other thing I would say, I'm not taking a party political view here, but I'm making, I hope, what is a human point. I think it is incredibly important, if you're to have a secure development, that you try to treat as a priority reducing the gap between the richest and the poorest. Because I think that on the whole, societies where the gap between the rich and the poor is smaller are more contented societies. And you can only expect a durable peace and a level of individual and national contentment if people feel they've got a fair slice of the action.
Well, can you hear me? Hi, my name is Tim Yadi from my lead project. Thanks for being here and sharing your thoughts and wisdoms and encouraging it. My question is just try to understand. So recently, there's an NLE national meeting took place, and a couple of articles came out about bit out to be, I guess, gentle to when they ask questions at the parliament, to the respective government officials and that sort of thing. So, and I'm sure Ambassador will have a lot more to say on that as well. So, and then you also mentioned about the role and the responsibility of the parliament, how critical that is.
Yeah.
So I just wondered if you have any advice or like, suggestions in terms of how could that be come into play, especially in this critical moment of transition.
Yeah.
And then some of the experience that you have, appreciate. And also, welcome your others' suggestions and thoughts as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope, ladies and gentlemen, you heard the thrust of that question. Our friend in the fourth row said that there'd recently been I think a meeting of the NLD where it had been suggested, or someone had suggested, that people, I assume he means members of Parliament, in asking questions of ministers should be quite gentle and try to help the government and so on. And yet, he said, I have made the point that Parliament needs to be tough and it needs to scrutinise and to question and challenge and hold the government to account. So, what thoughts would I like to offer? And I suppose really what I would say is this. I am very sensitive to and acutely conscious of your situation here. You've just come out of, frankly, a living hell that's lasted 6 decades. There is now, through massive popular mandate, a new government. And the new government, although it's comprised of people from all walks of life, and often people of considerable distinction, is also comprised of a good many people who are very new to Parliament and new to their responsibilities, because they were shut out, brutally shut out before. So I completely understand, it's absolutely natural and to be expected, that the government will want its parliamentary supporters to support it, to help it. to back its legislation, to speak up for it. And in that respect, it's absolutely understandable. And that happens in the UK, where we've had democratic regimes for a very long time. So I'm not criticising the desire of political leaders in asking for the support of their party in Parliament. That is normal, it happens in the UK, it is to be expected, and to a considerable extent, to a very considerable extent, it's perfectly right and proper. People are elected on a party ticket. But, and this is where, this is coming back to my answer to the first question, you can't just give simple answers to things. Life is more complex. There is a but, and the but is this. Members of Parliament, of course, have a duty to their party, and if their party is in government, to their government, but they also have a duty to their constituents, to their conscience, and to their country. And Parliament and government are not synonymous. Parliament is not a synonym of government. It's not the same as government. And Parliament's role is to question, to probe, to scrutinise, to challenge, sometimes to contradict, but certainly to hold to account the government of the day. So I would say, of course, members of Parliament are encouraged to support their party, that's perfectly understandable, but they are also there to be robust scrutineers of the executive branch of the political system. When I was an ordinary MP, I had party whips telling me what to do, and a lot of the time I supported my party, but I must tell you that for many years, before I became Speaker, I had a relationship with my party whips characterised by trust and understanding. I didn't trust them and they didn't understand me.
One last question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Yodway, I work in the power generation industry in Myanmar. In the World Economic Forum held in Bangkok, Aung San Suu Kyi mentioned reform must be in the right orders of priorities and sequence. So, in your opinion, what would be the right orders of priorities and sequence?